We're in Castlesound Studios in Pencaitland, which is in East Lothian in Scotland. I would probably sum up Castlesound as a fairly traditional recording studio. It has a large live room with 3 large booths, all with eye contact. A lot of the work that we do is based around that, the fact that people can set up as a live band and can perform the way they're used to. A lot of studios nowadays are probably based much more around computers and technology. We're much more based around a live room and a nice collection of microphones. You know, we're not the size of Ayr or Abbey Road, but I'd like to think that there was the same ethos in those kind of places. That you know, basically we can record very well acoustic music, you know, and all the versions therein, basically. A lot of the recordings that I make nowadays I see them much more as a photograph, or as opposed to something that's being entirely created, one instrument at a time. You know, in a kind of multi-track studio setup. I see it as much more taking a snapshot of what was happening that day. Therefore, if the musicians are world class and making an incredible sound, it makes it makes my job easier, I suppose. And it also makes it incredible. It makes me feel very privileged, you know, to sit and do that. A lot of the people that I'm working with are basically self-produce. You know, that it's music that's been gigged sometimes for years before they come into a studio. So effectively, that, you know, it's self-contained, and really my role as an engineer, I suppose it becomes a production role to a certain extent, but only in as much as what you're trying to do is make this side of it disappear for the people. So if I'm in a role of production, it's more so that to make the technology become invisible, so that they can do what they do, you know. And it's, I guess, then I just have to try and put myself in their shoes. And I guess that is a form of production in a way, isn't it? I guess. We've bought the new AWS 948, which has been a fantastic addition to the studio. It's meant that we can, you know, in terms of mixing, do much bigger sessions. It's actually attracting work just by having the desk. The original reason for upgrading was more based upon the limitations of the 900. 24 mono analog channels, and I found myself subgrouping within Pro Tools a lot, which is fine. And so, you know, sonically, I didn't really question that, but it required quite a lot of thought and work before the client ever appeared, to set up the sessions in a certain way. And obviously, if you're getting sessions from other studios, then to you know, cram 56 channels into 24, for example, could be quite hard work. That was the kind of primary reason why I wanted something larger. I loved the workflow of the 900 and the integration with Pro Tools. Now that I've used and I have become familiar with the 948, I can honestly say that unless I had a, you know, room-filling 72 channel duality, this is perfect for me. I love 24 stereo channels. It way exceeds what I thought it would be in terms of the things that I can do with it. It sounds really beautiful. The high mids don't go hard. The bottom end seems very deep without being at all muddy. Even things like the stereo bus compressor sound better for what I'm doing. I felt that the old stereo bus compressor, it had a tendency to lose bottom end if you kind of dug in too hard. This is different, definitely, to my ear. As you know, I mean, I've sat and played other people who I totally respect. We've sat and played with it, and everybody agrees. I mean, it just sounds fantastic. The depth the kind of front to back depth and left to right width are just fantastic on the desk. And it just seems to sound more solid in every way. It's so flexible that I found that every session that I've been mixing, I've taken a slightly different approach. But it's so easy on the desk that's perfectly doable. So, for example, I was just mixing a jazz album which also had strings. So I had, for example, bass drum, snare drum, stereo kit. Purely because actually when we'd been recording it, the drums sounded gorgeous in Pro Tools and it was all sounding lovely, so there was actually no reason for me to kind of take that apart only to recreate it again. It sounded great, so the rest of the kit came up on a stereo. Then I had stereo string room on 2 faders, then individual string mics over maybe 4 or 5, stereo piano up 1 fader, mono sax, so I just made it a mono channel so it becomes effectively just like the AWS 900, where I can use a mono insert if I want and all that. Likewise with the bass, probably a mono channel. So something like that, which would have taken at least the AWS 900 and all of the channels. I'm actually able to work with about 12 channels on it, and things that have been sounding great within Pro Tools, I just leave them. If I've got the toms and the overheads and everything that's sitting beautifully, they come up 1 fader. If the drums need to be a little bit brighter, I add a little bit of top end EQ and the whole thing just gets lifted. From an intuitive point of view and an instinctive point of view, it's really fast, really fast. You know if you want the drums to be brighter or whatever, instead of having to go over 5 or 6 mono channels and making sure that left and right are matched and everything, just the overheads, brighten them up a little bit on 1 channel and it's done. Also the fact that it's stereo channels and the fact that a lot of the time you're recording stereo channels in Pro Tools makes that workflow much faster. You're not having to think about effectively splitting a stereo channel over 2 mono faders on the old 900. So actually you can make your desk in the analog world effectively directly replicate what you're seeing on the screen. So you can have a combination of mono and stereo channels in exactly the same way as you have on the Pro Tools screen, which makes it incredibly fast to work. When I first started using it, I wasn't sure if it was a bit of a novelty or not, but actually now I'm completely convinced by it. And again, like going back to the jazz record that I was just mixing, which had strings, that's a prime example of where it really is beautiful. To be able to take the drum kit, for example, and narrow the overhead slightly instantly with 1 control, sitting in the middle of the speakers, and maybe it's subtle, and that's what's beautiful about it. You can use it just a tiny little bit, and it's a bit like using EQ. Obviously you can use EQ to give separation. It's another tool for getting separation in my world, and yeah, I think it's just brilliant. And because it's 1 control there, you're not having to think about it. It's an instinctive thing now. It's not like you're having to go, okay, well, I'm going to make the strings a bit wider, so I'll go and find a plug-in to do that and all that stuff. You just sort of try it, and suddenly you go, oh, the strings are really nice a wee bit wider, and the drums are really nice a little bit narrower. Or maybe the drums are nice a lot narrower, for example. And the fact that you can go from mono to silly is, it's just brilliant, and it's incredibly creative, I think, to do that. I think that when somebody comes to a studio like Castlesound, what you're paying for, as well as the technology, is consistency. You know that you're going to get the results that you want, and you know that somebody like myself has worked, I mean, I've done this since I left school, basically. So I've invested my entire adult life learning my trade and continuing to learn my trade. If somebody's recording in their bedroom equipment's amazing now, and they may get lucky, but it's not about being lucky, it's about being consistently good all the time. And I think that's why, you know, I mean, the thing, as I was telling you earlier, the album that I'm recording just now, there are 2 people from Canada, 2 people from Ireland, and 2 people from Scotland. And they've all come together here to record their album. They could have gone anywhere, they could have done it in somebody's bedroom, but their time's limited, and they know that they need to achieve the results that they want to, and for it to sound as good as it possibly can. That's why I think that studios are still relevant, and that's actually why I feel confident about going into the future, because I don't see why that should change. You know, bedroom recording, if you want to call it that, or home recording, has been around for decades now, really. The threat, I suppose, has been around for almost as long as I've been involved in studios. And yet, in some ways, a studio like Castlesound has gone from strength to strength. Partly, I think, because people do try and record in the bedrooms and realise that for certain types of music, it's just not right. It's just not good enough, basically. And that they need to concentrate on what they're doing, and let somebody like me concentrate on what I'm doing, and be a team, work as a team. You know, instead of being kind of isolated, work as a team with professionals. You know.